Now we move on to our next session. The next session is Future of Hospitality, Adapting a New Direction to Change Human Behavior. We have Mr. Mandeep Lamba, who's the president of HVS Anarock. Mr. Mandeep comes with an established leadership track record, having spent 35 years in varied roles with leading organizations, of which the last 17 years have been in CEO positions. His experience involves advising investors on their hospitality related growth and acquisition strategies, besides working with hotel owners and operators on asset management, raising debt and equity, feasibility and market studies, and executive search for hospitality and real estate leadership positions. He will be in conversation with Mr. Puneet Chatwal, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer at the Indian Hotels Company Limited. Mr. Chatwal is a global professional with close to 4 decades of leadership experience at highly acclaimed hotel groups in Europe and North America. Under his leadership, IHCL has embarked on a journey of reimagination to achieve sustainable, profitable growth. Prior to this, Mr. Chatwal was the Chief Executive Officer and member of Executive Board of Sternberg Hotels. He was also the Chief Development Officer of the Resitor Hotel Group, Carlson Hotels Worldwide. Mr. Chatwal has won awards, including the prestigious Carlson Fellowship, and was rated as one of Europe's 20 extraordinary minds in sales, marketing, and technology. HSMAI European Awards 2014. So now may I request Mr. Lamba to please take ahead the conversation with Mr. Chatwal.
Thank you very much for that very generous introduction, Pushkar. Puneet, good to see you again. I remember we did a session, I think it was the 9th of September, 2020, just when we were in the absolute throes of the pandemic and we were all grappling on how this is going to play out. Almost 18 months later, I'm going to start with IHCL, your company, just to set the tone. You this year, from whatever results we've seen so far, are going to more than double your revenues over last year, even though your last year base was much larger than other hotel companies. You're going to see occupancies within the 85 to 90% range of what they were pre-pandemic. You're going to see a healthy, robust EBITDA. You have opened 9 hotels with almost 700 keys this year, and you've signed another 19 with over 2,000 rooms, which will open up in various brands over the next few years. Given this sort of statistics, the numbers, and of course, a lot of your new age businesses have done phenomenally well. Is it safe to say, Puneet, would you like to say that the worst is behind you and the only trajectory from here is upwards?
Thank you, Mandeep. I don't know if it's fair to say that the worst is behind us, because nobody knows in the kind of world we are living in what's next.
On flight.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead, Puneet. Sorry.
So I personally remain optimistic that definitely worst is behind us. The industry is on a good track. Definitely since the last 2 weeks, it was beginning to do quite well between October till 20th of December. Then we got a setback of the Omicron till 20th or 25th of Jan. Things began to stabilize thereafter, and since last few weeks, the pickup with the business on the books and the balance with the cancellations is very positive and healthy. And I'm sure that is the state of the industry, not just in India, but also elsewhere in important markets in the world.
Surely, Puneet. I think all of us are showing in the industry what we all call cautious optimism. I do think that the industry is bouncing back. Of course, fingers crossed. Nobody really knows what next is going to happen in as much as the the pandemic is concerned or the virus is concerned, but we are hoping that we're more or less near the finishing line. But if you look at how the industry has performed, even generally, I think this year, from whatever mapping that HPS Anarock has done, we've opened more than 100 new hotels, which is about over 8,000 keys. And various operators have signed more than 170 hotels, which will add another 15,000 keys. So I feel that the investor confidence still seems to be there, and I think the basic fundamentals of the business still seem to be positive. Do you share the same sentiment, Puneet?
I think this is very true for the bigger brands and the domestic brands, that they've gone from strength to strength in various domestic markets across the world, because the international traffic has been shut. I mean, that's just all the demand that you have today is driven by domestic, and within domestic by leisure. But when it comes to growth, I think we can expect to see certain consolidation activity happening in the industry as your emergency credit line guarantee schemes and moratoriums at some point are lifted up. That is not anything new. It's not just related to COVID. That's a trend of the last several decades. And I do believe that the brands will get stronger, and the emphasis and the focus will be more on domestic brands, which are really the trusted brands on the Indian subcontinent. Now, if a brand has been coming from international roots but has also become as good as domestic, then that is also for me, operating in the domestic market, shoulder to shoulder with the domestic brands. So I do believe that the brands will get stronger, and also growth will keep happening. However, having said that, the supply side will be constrained and restricted. And this is just a phenomenon of COVID. Having gone through what the industry has gone through over the last 2 years, when your revenues in a quarter declined by almost 90% and another by 70 and another by 60 versus pre-COVID level, then you end up making a lot of losses. And with that, I think the survival of all the supply will not be possible. There will be 5 to 10% of the supply that will permanently shut or disappear from that hotel market that we have today. And new construction will either be delayed or will take time to come onto the market, because hotel assets would be available at 70, 80, 90% of the replacement value. Then why do you build new if you can get that? So there will be a lot of activity and a trade-off between existing and new growth, and we will start seeing that activity in 3 to 6 months from now. There will be an acceleration on that front. However, the demand will grow by leaps and bounds because we are coming from such a low base. So I think all in all, positive sentiment for the hotel investors, as the higher rates driven by demand should drive profitability. The hoteliers, number two, have had a chance to optimize their cost base in the last 2 years. This should translate into higher margins and better return on equity or return on investment.
Absolutely, Puneet. Now that you raised the the issue of ROI, one of the questions that I had, which I wanted to ask you, is if you look at the Indian hospitality industry, if you look at the per capita distribution, if you look at the total inventory that we have in our major metro cities, let's take Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore as examples, and if you compare them to our neighboring countries and metros like Shanghai or Kuala Lumpur or Tokyo or Singapore, we are adequately lower in infrastructure in the number of rooms that we have to offer on a like-to-like basis, given grade A office supply, given arrivals, airport infrastructure, etc. but we still have, amongst the lowest ADRs globally for very, very globally competitive hotels. And we continue to build hotels which are expensive, including the cost of land and the cost of capital. Therefore, this whole equation of ROI always is challenged. I wanted to ask you on what you think would be things that the industry can do to get out of this. How do we get out of this situation that we are in currently?
Yeah, I think Mandeep, it's a very interesting question which can have several answers, but I'll try to make it, as efficient from a timing point of view. Number one, and the most important factor is we need to focus more and more on domestic business, leisure or non-leisure. And if we do that, and this opportunity has come through COVID, India becomes a 12-month destination. Our industry has always operated like 40% of the revenue on the H1 and 60% in H2. I think both these 40 and 60 can go up significantly and the gap can be narrowed or bridged because of the focus on domestic. That's one. Second is the growth of the GDP in the nation. I think if we achieve the numbers as outlined in the budget, coming from a higher base this year, if the country does achieve 8%, 9% growth, it will obviously translate into better RevPAR numbers for the industry. There is a third factor that is very important in India, which we tend to forget. We keep comparing the RevPAR, but really here we have to compare the TRevPAR. And the total revenue per available room is not as bad because we still have large weddings business, we have large meetings business, and I think that helps us in driving revenue. So our revenue managers are sometimes more occupancy focused because your F&B per occupied room is not an amount to be ignored, and we do make 40% or higher margin or even on food and beverage business. Finally, I think it's a function of demand and supply, and we've suffered a bit on the demand side post 2008 or 10. In comparison to the supply has grown significantly. It's not a long time ago, maybe 15 years ago, we used to talk the branded hotel supply in India. In whole of India is less than the branded supply in London. And I think nobody talks about it anymore. So that shows how healthy the supply growth has been, and the demand was unable to grow at that pace for a variety of reasons and a variety of reforms that were not positive for the industry, but important for the country. And I think we are on a good track with the current scenario. I think demand will outpace supply. So all in all, in 2 to 3 years, it should all balance out and rates should increase. The good news, however, is, and I can share that on this forum, if you looked at Indian Hotels Q3 results, our leisure portfolio has done an average rate of more than 16,000 rupees. I don't think we ever did that in the history in the leisure portfolio, and that really translates to more than $200. Now that is comparable to any destination in the world, whether it's a Shanghai or a Dubai or a Florida, because that is a combination of the rate that you get in various locations. That means there are many locations which were doing north of $300 as average rate, and that not for a week but for the full quarter. So I think that's very positive, and now we are hoping that the corporate segment comes back so that there is a rate increase on that front too.
Interesting, you should bring that up, Puneet, on the leisure segment. I think your portfolio of hotels did much better than several others, simply because the balance between corporate and leisure was better than most other hotel companies. Do you think that this whole...
Sorry, Mandeep, sorry to interrupt you. I think our strategic initiatives became what they call in German, like hitting the bullseye, or like a Volltreffer is the right word. Sometimes in an unlucky situation, you do tend to get lucky also. So I think the kind of hotels we opened in Rishikesh, in Shimla, in Darjeeling, they created the home run for us on the leisure side. I
Right.
wish we had something similar on the business and the non-leisure locations too.
Coming back to leisure, Puneet, do you think that there is going to be much greater interest in leisure than we've seen typically hotel companies take in the past?
A very interesting question also, Mandeep, because this is something which I've been debating in my mind over the last few weeks. You know, having lived abroad for almost 3 decades, I used to see a lot of people getting into the car and driving on a holiday. And if we also went all the way to US, you would rent a car and drive. This was not so common in Indian context. However, that changed dramatically during the COVID time. I think the first trip people took, they might have debated for 2 or 3 weeks or deliberated at home. Shall we drive? Shall we not? Shall we get the pass? Or how will it happen? But I'm sure nobody remained at that one trip. The first one was a difficult step. And I think everybody by now would have done at least 3 to 4 trips and driving for 6, 7, 8 hours with full awareness of the kind of roads we might encounter or the kind of traffic or the animals crossing the road is not anymore such a barrier as it was possibly pre-COVID. The question is, can the industry capitalize on this new source of business and retain it? Because people will be less hesitant to get into the car and drive than they were before. So I think the industry from a long-term perspective, mid to long-term perspective, should benefit from this new age traveler who took the families and drove several hours to get to destinations. I mean, we launched a campaign which was our most successful campaign in the last 20 months called the 4D, which was you dream, you drive, you discover, and you delight yourself. So you discover a new destination and you delight yourself, and we marketed under 4D. And this was at a time when we were also not sure that so many people would be driving. So I think this is a very good change that has happened and a very positive change for creating those incremental and additional room nights in hotels. And this will also encourage hotel development along the highways, like you have on the Western Hemisphere.
Um, Absolutely, Puneet. I couldn't agree more that we've seen so much of this activity. And, we can talk a little bit about the change in human behavior that the pandemic has kind of caused. I think that whole realization of, an increased realization of our fidelity and the reduced guilt in self-indulgence and the way people want to sort of travel now, the safety protocols. Do you think that the industry or the sector is going to see changes in hotel design and in hotel operations in the near to midterm future?
The industry has seen several changes, and also this pandemic will bring certain changes with it. I think more consciousness around health, around hygiene, around wellness, around places to park your car. All these things will become very important. Have already become important. All your hygiene protocols, touchless service, for people who are uncomfortable, leveraging digital to drive your not only your businesses but also your services within the hotel. So I think uh, these kind of changes, they will happen. It's just like today having to go through a scanner for the baggage, or when you go through the main door of a hotel to take out your telephone and then you go through a scanner has become like a permanent change in our lives. I think similarly, some of these things have already become a lasting change in our lives, and I don't see any reason why we should not actually welcome such changes, because they are for the good of all our stakeholders, not just the customers, but our associates who work in there. And also, as hoteliers, we should be pioneers in providing a safe environment for all the people we serve, we care for all the people who we work with.
Fabulous. Puneet, on a lighter note, where does Puneet Chatwal take a drive and take a leisure vacation, and which is one of your favorite hotels?
I don't know if the question is that easily answerable because I do spend some time still in Europe. So I would say in India, I still maintain Goa to be the leisure destination, and till now that has not changed. And when I look at going abroad, I think if you go to Southeast Asia, it's still Thailand, and in Europe, I would call it Southern Europe, Spain or Italy.
Fabulous. We have 1 minute left. I'm going to ask you the last question, Puneet. If you had a wish list of 3 things that you think can really help in turning this industry around, what would those 3 things be?
Well, there are definitely one which we've been lobbying for as Hotel Association of India or as CII. I think the CII is the platform we are on today. And we have been lobbying for that one point, inclusion of tourism in the concurrent list of constitution, providing hospitality sector infrastructure status as of, let's say 20 crores versus 200 crores, and this, at the state level getting an industry status. These are 3 things, but I call them in the positioning of tourism as an industry, as a multiplicator of jobs, as a sector that can help in the growth of the GDP and providing the young people employment. The second is dare to be different. Asian hospitality can improve, and we don't have to be always subservient in doing so. And finally, balancing our customer care with leveraging of the digital so that we are better positioned, and we have demonstrated we can do that. If Taj can become world's strongest hotel brand, then we can be the role model of the hybrid model of service going forward.
Well, absolutely. We are proud of Taj and about you and your leadership. This is India's most marquee hotel brand. The things that have been done, the success that we are seeing, are all fairy tale stories, real stories actually. And thank you so much, Puneet Chatwal. Always a pleasure catching up and speaking to you. Good luck. Stay healthy.
Thank you, Mandeep. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chatwal, and thank you, Mr. Mandeep, for that excellent session.